I've no doubt he'd be grateful that this will probably be his last week listed in these talking points, but there he is again, and he's now gone. Lord Allen is no longer the chair at the BHA, and there has been an interesting fallout from this, which we'll discuss in a few moments' time. How sorry an episode do you think this has been generally, Neil?
I mean, I was thinking on the way here, like, you know, didn't it just feel inevitable that it wasn't going to work? At the end of the day, they brought a guy in on the basis that everyone was going to start to see the bigger picture and everyone was going to give a little and stop kind of protecting their little bit and think about the wider, what the sport needs collectively. And that was never going to happen when it comes down to it. And unless the governance structure changes, it's never going to happen for anyone. It doesn't matter whether it's Lord Allen, you know, or Lord Charles, you know, whatever. I'm trying to think of another Lord, but I don't know. I mean, now because they sort of said, oh, well, we'll go slightly political. I think there was a feeling that, well, you know, Labour were going to get a big majority. We need someone with a connection with Labour. He's got a connection with industry. You know, he'd run ITV and he'd...
Does that mean we have to get someone connected with the Greens ahead of the next
one? Well, yeah, maybe Natalie Bennett. But I don't know. Who the hell do they get now?
Jamie, who do they get?
Listen, it's very hard to find the right person, but we just need to bring everyone together, and I don't think we have to concentrate on commercialism entirely. You know, we've got to think about the sport. The sport is great. You know, we've got the best week of racing coming up. We've got wonderful horses running in wonderful races. Maybe we need somebody within the sport. You know, why are we bringing somebody from outside the sport who knows nothing about it? You know, Lord Allen didn't know anything about the sport before coming in. Surely we need somebody from within that's actually going to drive it forward with the best interests at heart.
Yeah, you'd imagine that is what is going to happen now as well. And there's some sort of try and preside over, yes, some period of stability, but is also brave enough to deal with the fallout from the Lord Allen situation, which is that the larger independent racecourses and the Jockey Club are now standing up and saying that the Racecourse Association, as it stands and with its current voting mechanism, is not fit for purpose. And so why do the smaller tracks have just the same voting rights as the larger tracks who have more commercial heft? How's that all gonna shake down?
Well,
Ascot were very much on the front foot this week.
It looks like the whole thing's going to fall apart, doesn't it? I mean,
they've given Will Walsh, the RCA chair, until the end of April to agree to a governance review of the RCA.
I think at the end of the day, we can't carry on the way we've been going. Things have to change. You know, we can't just bring in another Lord Allen and just assume that, you know, you can't just bang your head against a brick wall, can you? The thing needs smashing up completely, really. I don't know, in some...
So hang on a minute, I said period of stability a minute.
No stability. We don't need stability.
The anarchist is...
I mean, at the end of the day, it isn't, like, you know, basically the argument within the RCA is that you can't have... It's like the Football League, where you've got some clubs that are really big and other clubs that are struggling to survive, and they both have the same vote, and they're completely different businesses. And that doesn't really work. And the idea that ARC collectively has a lot of small courses and can sort of block anything that maybe, you know, the bigger courses want to do, just none of that works. I think that you need to, I don't know, what do you think about the idea of the Jockey Club buying ARC? Like, is that not ultimately the solution?
I'm sure they love the idea of it, but it's a question of whether they've got a big enough chequebook to satisfy the rubric.
But is that really the only way that it could work, that it could go? I mean, isn't I hate to say it.
It has been suggested to me that this is part of a big Jockey Club power play and that they want to be back in the sort of dominant position that they were in the 70s and 80s, Jamie.
Well, it would make sense if all the racecourses were singing from the same song sheet, wouldn't it? You know, ultimately having all these separate racecourses, and they're the ones with the power, ultimately, and having them all sort of fighting for their own sort of slice of the cake, you know, it's just slightly greedy, isn't it?
Do you see this RCA potential restructure then, as moving closer to what the thoroughbred group wants, that side of the industry?
I think so. I mean, I suppose one of the ideas that's been mooted is, you know, racecourses all cut their fixtures, you know, one fixture out per year. But the problem with that is, you know, Newton Abbot and Cartmel don't have as many fixtures as Uttoxeter and Fontwell, for example. So I don't think it's quite as simple as that. But we need to have them all singing from the same song sheet, and it would make sense if they were all under one banner.
But ultimately, you know, when you talk about like the problems of racing, the most common thing that you hear people say is that there's too much racing, there's too many races, there's not enough horses for the amount of races that we've got.
There's a lot of low-level racing, isn't there?
Yeah, but whenever there's a suggestion that we cut some, you know, people are up in arms.
Well, I don't think we're talking about cutting racing. It's talking about racecourses cutting fixtures.
Yeah.
And it's very different to say everyone slashes their...
But also, like, ultimately, you know, let's be honest, we have too many racecourses in the country. There's too many racecourses. Like,
well, I'm not sure about that.
They're all lovely and beautiful, and I'm sure if we started to name names of ones that would close, everyone would be, oh yeah, God, I've had some great winners there, that should never close. But there are too many racecourses.
Well, I'm not sure you can say that for jump racing because the ground gets deteriorated through the winter, and you can't just run on the same course time and time again. So I think it'd be a shame if any racecourse were to close.
Okay, well, we'll turn our attentions now back to the festival. What sort of festivals Willie Mullins going to have? People saying all season, oh, he's not going to dominate quite to the same extent. Well, when Mighty Parks won by 20 and Kopek des Bordes has won by 10 and Fonoras starts shortening for the champion hurdle, Jamie, I think it'll be business as usual, won't it?
It would. I think it's quite nice when you look at the races now, and you know, several years ago it was dominated by, every race was dominated by Willie, wasn't it? And as a wonderful trainer as he is and a great man as he is, it's actually good for racing that actually he's not got the short price favourite for all of the Grade 1s. So I think it's good for the sport.
What do you think, Tom? What would be your Willie line?
Well, I think he would have liked to have had a better start to the first 4 months of the season, but it looks like he's rocking and rolling again. It really does.
He normally times it right, though, doesn't he?
He does, but equally, in all the years that Willie's been bringing horses, they're proper. I mean, Vatours and Mins, they were favoured for the Supreme Novice before they ever ran. Never mind 3 weeks before the Supreme. So Mighty Park might be the next cometh, but he's ran in one maiden hurdle. El Kairos has ran in two maiden hurdles. These horses haven't graded form. Min got there and Vatour got there with graded form and deserved to be the price they were because they were champions. Now, let's see. And the thing about Mighty Park too, he's by the great walk in the park. He's a half-brother to Mike Bite. The occasion.
Could go either way. Could go either way.
And I know one thing, old Park Stark will walk on down to the racecourse and he'll go off out and do his job and he'll come back doing it. So let's get it on.
Okay. On that note, the juggling of the Gold Cup horse. We're going to talk to David Casey in a minute. Such a shame Galopin Des Champs injured, and it sounds like a very significant injury as well. Certainly won't be seen again this season. And Willie was great yesterday, I think, talking about let's enjoy what he's done.
Absolutely.
But he's got one. He's only one in the Gold Cup, and that's Gaelic Warrior. No factor file in the Gold Cup. What do you make of that?
It's very hard to come back from a horse that's 4 to 5, 4 to 6 for a race he definitely will win. To go to a race he could win. Very hard. When you're a man that wants winners and has had over 100, you want the next 100. And by having him in the race he can win, he will win. Does it
say something about what JP and his team think about their chances in the Gold Cup with last year's winner, I know the way you're thinking, and with Spillane Tower?
Tricky to say, isn't it? Because I know the way you're thinking hasn't been anywhere near the horse that he was when he won the Gold Cup last year. I wish he'd been running those kind of races against Gitmaker in the Kimura. But as far as Willie's concerned, he's got the favourite for the Ryanair, favourite for the Gold Cup. You know, fair play to him. I was in his shoes.
I figured this was more a JP play than a Willie play. The factor file play.
Possible, yeah, possible. Like Gaelic Warrior, he's an admirable horse. A bit hard on himself, but could he win a Gold Cup? Yes, he could. But I think Nicky Henderson's going to have a big say against it.
Do you think he'll start favourite Gaelic Warrior or not?
Quite possibly, yeah.
And if he doesn't, Django Bay probably will, won't he?
I'd say so, yeah. And he's a big player.
You think Django Bay's a big player?
Massive player.
Why?
Because Harry Cobden was the reason that the King George was such a spectacle. He slowed the race up for 2.5 miles. He dipped out down the inside, and 4 amazing horses had to sprint for 3 furlongs. Any good horse can do that. Normally, the King George, they jump off, they go a gallop from the start, and they're spread out over 15 lengths. Django Bay, for me, in the last half a furlong, was the closer of the 4. He's the one that needs to go left-handed. He's the one that stays strong. And Jukebox Man, there's plenty of good horses in there, but I just think Django Bay has been leading up to a race like this.
Right. Nico got off Django Bay.
I heard what he said on the way in.
Yeah, he said this is
some different result next time.
Yeah. And he was saying to us last week, we were filming an edition of the Paddock last week, and he was saying, I want them to go proper Gold Cup pace.
Yeah, they will.
I want them to rip this race open, which is interesting for an Arkle winner.
Yeah.
How many British winners are there going to be?
I think it'll be as close as it's been for a long time. I'm going to go 50-50.
What? Really?
Wow.
No.
I'm telling you, you're going to see a big swing this year, I promise you. Especially in the handicaps. Dan Skelton, the handicap king.
I did see a thing the other day about...
won't be as big as you think now.
I saw a thing about Gordon Elliott percentages on soft or heavy relative to Gordon Elliott percentages on good to soft or good. And, you know, it's possible we have quite a dry week and it's not too much give underfoot. And you know, we tend to think of the Nicky Henderson horses as being more good ground horses. The Paul Nicholls horses are being more good ground horses. Maybe the weather might sway it a little bit towards the GB
3 or 4
horses.
years ago, when Brave Man's Game was in the novice hurdle, on the Tuesday it was nice ground. And the Irish weren't winning like they normally do. Then the heavens opened on the Wednesday, and then they started winning by 15 lengths. It is down to ground. Every day of their life, they're being trained on and running on ground that is that deep. The English surfaces at the racecourses and at home are a lot kinder.
Also, generally for punters next week, you know, like the form that's in the form book, you know, it's never stopped raining this year, has it? And, you know, now if we do have a dry ground
festival, rained in January, really.
Yeah,
the Welsh National was on good.
That's true. That's true.
It was a very dry autumn. It was only January that's been wet.
A lot of the form, though, is going to be. I mean, you know, I've been in Devon actually recently, and it rained for 60 days this year at one stage.
I live down there.
Yeah,
I know.
It's never stopped.
Should we put a number on it then? There's 28 races at the festival, and I was sort of working on the basis that we'd be looking at 18, 10, 17, 11, something like that, to Ireland.
I'll go a little bit more English, but in Ireland's favour.
Okay.
60-40.
So...
I can do 50-50 or 60-40.
So 16-12, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you think, Tom?
I'll go like I said, 14-14.
Oh, no, I think GB will do all right, but I think 17-11 is quite a good guess.
Right, Bet365 have ended key sponsorships at Newmarket Racecourse and Haydock Park Racecourse. This follows on the heels of Corals withdrawing their sponsorship at the Cheltenham Festival. These are all a result, the operators say, of the taxation hikes as announced by Rachel Reeves in the last budget. And more on that in just a second. But Neil, first of all, is this posturing by the firms, or is this just a case of, well, I told you so, we told you this would happen, and this has happened? Well, and will horse racing think reflectively on its own position during the Axe the Racing tax debate?
Well, I think from the BHA point of view, they didn't have much choice over the Axe the Racing tax. You know, they had to stand and fight the corner for racing. They can't fight the battles of large multinational bookmaking organisations worrying about their profits. But large multinational bookmaking organisations are, you know, one-stop shops for gambling. Lots of people like to gamble on horse racing and football and table games and slot machines. You know, this idea that there are punters that just do one thing, there's not that many. So it seemed inevitable to me that this kind of stuff would come in. I don't think it's posturing. I think some people would say, well, hang on a minute, the tax hasn't even come in yet. Why are they doing this? Well, of course, these sponsorships come up for renewal, and they have to think about their business over the next year or the next 2 years. I think we got more pain for the sport going forward in this way. I definitely don't think it's posturing. I did see, who was it? Was it Thomas Saville was saying, well, you know, what the hell's going on? Denise Coates pays herself, you know, a huge bonus every year, hundreds of millions, and of course, you know, fair play to her. She pays most of. She doesn't take her money in dividends. She pays PAYE. She's the highest paid person in the country, and so she pays a fair amount of tax. We have to say that, but she can easily afford to sponsor these races at Newmarket because it's pocket change to her. Well, that's not really how businesses work, is it? I think that's a bit. I thought that was a bit of a naive viewpoint. I think it's just going to get worse, really, this kind of thing.
Can we just touch on this freedom of information request that came out this week?
Yeah.
Which was that we saw the Department of Culture, Media and Sport advice to the Treasury that had taken place before the budget. And the DCMS, to paraphrase or to précis, essentially said there's not going to be a great boon to racing by variable tax rates unless they're getting some sort of something back from a reformation of the levy. Well, we've got one, but not the other.
Well, yeah, there's that. And also, I don't know whether you saw there were some figures out in terms of the amount of tax they're getting in, which suggests that there's a huge leak to the black market. And then, of course, the other thing that came in the budget, which, perhaps people in racing didn't really pick up on as much, is that sports gambling, which is, we sort of, obviously, again, I don't really blame the BHA because I think they're in a difficult position. They have to fight racing's corner. They don't need to care about sports betting. But I think we would all agree that people betting on slots are more susceptible to harm, and it's kind of considered to be, by the general public, more of a bad thing than having a fiver on the Grand National. But having a fiver on the football on a Saturday, I think, is much more in the camp of horse race betting than in the camp of slots. And they got absolutely hammered. And that's the fastest growing, people betting bet builders on soccer matches is a high margin product, but it's also the fastest growing product. And they got absolutely nobbled by the tax. And this is why things like this sponsorship are being cut, because the value of a customer changes across all of the things that they bet on. And I think it's really ill thought out, the whole tax changes. And you can see the Treasury didn't even factor in everything they needed to.
Yeah, what it did tell you with that for a freedom of information request is that, no matter that the Treasury were told that the revenue that they would get in would be completely obliterated by the revenue that was going to be lost to the black market, and also was there ever going to be any meaningful benefit to racing? The lobby, the gambling-related harm lobby, Jamie, is talking with a much more effective voice than the lobby that says it's fine to have a bet.
I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that betting on a slot machine or in the casino is deemed, along the same kind of level as betting on a horse racing.
Well, it's not now. That's the point. So the government have done something for horse racing in that respect, but there's no sign of the levy being reformed, and there's no necessary benefit from it, from what we're seeing at the moment. Which
is a shame, isn't it, for racing?
Yeah, it is. For sure. Let's talk about Frankie Dettori. As I said, tax doesn't have to be taxing, Neil, unless you're him at the moment. This is looking quite unappealing.
Yeah, so they've come back and said that his bankruptcy is going to last longer than he was hoping, and that I don't want to say anything that's going to get me into trouble. Did they say that he potentially acted fraudulently?
Well, I don't think those were the words. Those weren't the words that were used.
As I said, I don't want to get myself into trouble.
The words we used is that there's an issue with full disclosure of assets, and that the trustees had been asked to investigate more fully.
I think it's such a shame to a man of his career, because the two most well-known flat jockeys of all time are Lester Pickett and Frankie Dettori, and for this to be the end of that career is such a shame. Whatever's happened or hasn't, it's a shame. It really is.
Yeah, it's an incredibly difficult situation. Hopefully, one that'll be resolved in due course. I want to spend a little bit more time talking about an issue that's aroused significant debate this week, and that is the voucher scheme for winners of Grade 1 and winners and runners-up in Grade 1 races through March and April in Great Britain. So, if you are the owner of a winner of a Grade 1 race through March and April, you get £20,000 voucher to set against the training fees for a new horse trained in Britain. And if you are the owner of the runner-up of a Grade 1 horse in March or April, you get £10,000 to redeem against training fees of a new horse in Great Britain. Now, you might be one of the beneficiaries of this, technically. If an owner fancies having a horse in Britain, a new horse, and they can redeem the training fees with you. Are you in favour of it, or is it money just going to the richest owners that should be distributed elsewhere?
No, listen, this is going to divide opinion, of
massively,
course
and has done.
And has done. But I do think that we have to aspire to achieve. And by aspiring to achieve and putting any incentives in place to have horses trained in Britain, and the better horses trained in Britain, has to be a good thing. So
you're in favour of it, broadly speaking. And you would train for a lot of syndicates, a lot of the smaller owners. You would train a lot of horses in that mid to high bracket. People say are a little bit forgotten about, don't have the prize money put on for them. But you would reject that?
This is a very, very small gesture in the grand scheme of racing. This is a very small gesture to try and encourage the better horses to be trained in Britain. You know, nobody's trying to change racing here. Nobody's going to try and. This is a drop in the ocean of racing's finances, and if it can in any way improve Britain, then why would you not be in favour of it?
And the conversation we were having earlier was right. What's the score going to be at Cheltenham? You know, I was saying. I guess the idea of this. I guess the idea behind this, Tom, is that punters and racegoers in Britain see better horses more of the time on British racecourses. It is a protectionist policy, but there is logic behind it.
That is happening right now behind the scenes because 95% of horses that move, I know about. I know who's buying them.
Yep.
Right. So I'm telling you, there's a massive shift on. There's a lot of money being spent in England to get horses out of Ireland or France to arrive in England. That is another thing. And that can be developed. It could be so much better. Give it a chance. Yeah. It's something, but it might end up in the middle bracket if they see it can work. It doesn't have to be. People jump on the bandwagon all the time when someone tries to do something new. Let's do nothing. That's what's being done right now. It's not working. They're trying to do something different. Good on them.
Right, we're going to continue this conversation in just 1 second with Richard Wayman.